Hi, I'm Dan Zimmer. I'm the Director of Sales Marketing for Hard Steel Security, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the AV Cage Anti-Theft Projector Mount. It wasn't that long ago that projectors had 3 CRT guns, weighed between 80 and 120 pounds, were the size of a coffee table, and required a couple of days to install and converge. Theft was rarely an issue, even though the sticker price on these projectors was quite high. We never worried that much about locking them up, and in fact, the attitude often seemed to be, if you can get it off the ceiling and out the door, you're welcome to it. Today's projectors are a different story. They disappear out of institutional environments every single day, and not just schools. Houses of worship, hospitals, performance venues, rental and staging setups, they're all victims of theft. Portable, easily disposed of on the street or through Craigslist, stolen projectors end up attached to game consoles, or in home theaters, or even back in other institutional environments. It's a growing problem. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here, each of these pictures is also at the cost of several $1,000s. What can we do about this? Projectors aren't standalone devices. They're connected to source equipment, control systems, networks. They're part of a larger infrastructure. To understand the part, we must understand the whole. Many facilities will have a formal security master plan, and people or departments responsible for that plan. Part of their responsibility will be to maintain a list of both assets and threats. Your first step is to make sure that projectors are counted as an asset. You'd think that would be a given, but it's not. The next step, in the words of Sun Tzu, is to know your enemy, to understand what the threats are and where they're coming from. Once we've done this, we can begin to assess the available countermeasures, how they can be layered for best effect, and what the anticipated cost-benefit will be. We'll look at each of these in more detail. We'll begin with a brief overview of security. All formal security plans should begin with an asset survey and inventory record. This can be as simple as a spreadsheet or as sophisticated as a web-based asset management system. The next step is to understand the various sources of threat. Now, this might require consulting with other stakeholders such as facilities managers or security departments and peers. What are other areas within a facility experiencing? What about peers at other facilities? Is there historical data to draw from? Can trends be identified? Finally, the goal is to have comprehensive strategies in place to manage these threats. Both type and degree of threat must be addressed. Countermeasures, which we'll talk more about, should be reviewed regularly. Is what we're doing still appropriate and adequate? There are many factors that contribute to risk, and this table outlines some of the basic ones across a variety of facility types and environments. The street value of an asset needs to be taken into account. A data projector will have a higher street value than a matrix switcher, for instance, even though the acquisition cost of the switcher may have been higher. Also, what's the neighborhood like? Is it a high crime area? This will vary from facility to facility and may play a role in threat management decision-making. Remember, a low historical instance of crime should never be used as a justification for not employing countermeasures. This would be fallacious reasoning, and by that same reasoning, we could argue against the need for life insurance. After all, you haven't died yet, right? Why would you need life insurance? If your facility meets the criteria as outlined in Table 1, you are at risk. So who owns responsibility? From our experience, it's very common to encounter a laissez-faire attitude in this area, especially in facilities or environments where there's no formal security plan or chain of accountability. Hey, I just work here. It's not my department, budget, etc. Ownership of responsibility for countermeasure strategies needs to be clearly assigned and clearly identified to the rest of the organization. Where does the buck stop? Theft figures are available from a variety of agencies, and they paint a disturbing picture. What's even more troubling is the general consensus that at the K-12 level, equipment theft is seriously underreported. Students of the Second World War will remember that the Maginot Line was an infamous line of perimeter defenses which France had built along its borders with Germany and Italy. The French had such complete faith in the invulnerability of the Maginot Line that they had no plan B, and as history records, all the Germans had to do was breach the line at one point to be able to overrun the country. Generally considered one of the great failures of military history, the term Maginot Line is now often used as a metaphor for something that's confidently relied upon but in the end proves ineffective. Perimeter security is important, but risks becoming a Maginot Line if relied upon exclusively. If your perimeter has been breached, what other countermeasures do you have? Projectors and other AV equipment need their own protection. We are all familiar with the concept of diminishing returns. A professional threat management strategy employs layers of security, and up to a point of diminishing returns, the more layers the better. It's important to keep in mind that, like Shangri-La, a theft-proof environment is an impossible ideal. Security professionals are fond of saying that locks keep honest people honest. You cannot make your equipment or your environment theft-proof. However, diminishing returns apply to the thief as well. By combining your countermeasures in well-designed layers, you can succeed in making your assets unattractive and not worth the risk or trouble. The AV cage is an important layer in this onion. It's been designed with input from leading IT and facilities managers to provide highly effective asset-specific security. Okay, so you have this valuable projector asset attached to the end of an 1.5" Schedule 40 NPT pipe. How do you keep it there? Traditionally, there have been three common approaches. Number one, the retrofit. That would be adding anti-theft features such as button-head Torx screws, security cables, and audible motion-type alarms to a conventional, lightweight consumer mount. Number two would be the pizza box. That's that shallow steel box that sits on top of the conventional mount that covers the connection points between the mount and the projector. Number three is the lobster trap. That's a full enclosure that covers the entire mount and projector in a large, one-size-fits-all perforated steel box. Now, each of these suffers from one or more significant flaws, including insufficient security. They can be heavy or awkward to install. In the case of alarms, they may require ongoing maintenance in the form of battery replacement. They can cause the projector to overheat and reduce lamp and component life. They may block IR or access to ports and onboard controls. Aesthetically, they can be unattractive. They can make servicing the projector really difficult, awkward, and inconvenient, and they often cannot be keyed alike. In designing the AV cage, we sought to address each of these. The result is a fundamentally different and uniquely effective approach to securing a projector. The higher the risk, the stronger the countermeasure required. While typical unsecure mounts may be fine for most residential and many commercial installations, their lightweight construction and lack of any serious anti-theft countermeasures makes them wholly inappropriate for a high-risk environment. The 12-gauge cold-rolled steel construction of the AV cage is more than twice as thick as most competing mounts, whether secure or unsecure. This makes the AV cage very resistant to cutting tools and brute force assault. The AV cage employs a framework approach utilizing adjustable interlocking components. This allows for a highly flexible, customized fit that does not add to the thermal load of the projector nor interfere with inputs, onboard controls, and IR sensors. The AV cage can be adjusted to fit a wide range of projectors with optional height, width, and length extension kits available to accommodate larger projectors or those with an uncommon footprint. Here you can see the AV cage adjusted to fit a number of different projector sizes and models from a variety of vendors. Here's a question. Is a security fastener truly secure if you can buy the tool or driver for it at your local hardware store? We don't think so. That's why the AV cage employs proprietary security fasteners at all its assembly points. An adjustable full wrap wing around the outside of the cage is what keeps your projector safeguarded inside. The wing is held in place via an included 70mm disc lock, and the lock tab itself has 6 different mounting positions to ensure best fit and flexibility. Optional upgrade locks offer a more sophisticated locking mechanism and serial numbered keys. So if part of your key management strategy is to maintain multiple assets under one lock, this makes it easy to do so, not only on initial orders, but reorders as well. The most obvious difference between the AV cage and a typical unsecure mount is its cradle design. It's also the most important difference. Unlike other mounts, the AV cage doesn't rely on the tiny, delicate brass ferrules that are cast into the projector's plastic housing for use as anchoring points. These can be fairly easily defeated just by using a little leverage and a long-handled screwdriver or pry bar. The AV cage, by contrast, is just that, a heavy-duty 12-gauge steel cage. But in spite of this cage-like nature, projectors are actually easier to service because there are no bolts, screws, or cables to undo. All you need is the key for the disc lock, and a projector can be removed in under a minute. Another unique feature of the AV cage is the ball and collar assembly, which is designed to provide up to 15 degrees of yaw and pitch adjustment. A typical mount would more commonly employ a couple of U-type joints or gimbals to achieve this, but if you look at nature, the structure that's employed in your major load-bearing joints, namely your hips and your shoulders, isn't a U-joint, but a ball and socket. This has the advantage of being mechanically much simpler and for our purposes also much more secure. There's only one single friction surface to control, and you can literally adjust the yaw and pitch with one hand and tighten the 2 set screws down with the other. The ball itself is secured onto the end of the pipe with its own set screw. Now this is an important security feature as it prevents the mount from being unscrewed from the pipe. The collar then drops down over the ball and attaches to the cage top plates using the included security fasteners. And once the projector is placed in the cage, these fasteners can no longer be accessed. Like the cage, the ball and collar are very heavy duty and extremely resistant to attack. One of the advantages of the large surface area between the ball and collar is that once the set screws are tightened down, the adjustment's very firm. You can have absolute confidence that the AV cage will maintain its alignment. But that's yaw and pitch. What if you discover that you neglected to allow for the lens offset on a projector when mounting your pipe? Or that the replacement projector you've been asked to install has a different offset than its predecessor? Or the base building contractor responsible for hanging the screen misread the takeoffs and hung the screen 2 inches too far to the left? That never happens, right? Fortunately, the perforations on the AV cage top plates aren't just for good airflow and thermal management or to reduce weight, but they're also to provide multiple mounting locations for the ball and collar. Correcting for offset is easy. We're often asked how long it takes to assemble the AV cage. And you can figure on 15 minutes or so for a one-off using a power driver. If you're building multiple cages to fit the same projector model, the per unit assembly time will be even faster. Compared to a typical unsecure mount, assembling the AV cage will take a little longer, but this is an apples to oranges comparison. If you factor in the time it would take to make such a mount comparably secure by adding cables, alarms, or a lobster trap box, it will take at least as long and probably longer. And what you end up with is a camel. What's a camel? A camel is a horse designed by a committee. Sure, you can ride it, but a camel is awkward, ugly, unruly, and it might just bite you. Don't settle for a camel when you can own a horse. What does it really cost to replace a stolen projector? Sure, the sticker price in today's average projector is a lot lower than the old 3 guns we talked about at the beginning, but to that you have to add the cost of lost productivity. In a school, you could lose a projector in September and it might not get replaced until the summer. How happy do you think an instructor who's booked into that classroom for the semester is going to be? This is the 21st century. Expectations have changed. Content facilitators, whether they're teachers in a school, ministers in a church, or presenters at a corporate event, want to be able to bring in their laptops, CD-ROMs, or thumb drives, just plug in and go. If you sprung on them that they had to go back to overhead transparencies and flip charts, they'd run screaming from the room, as might their audience. There's also lost opportunity. The last thing an organization wants to spend this year's budget on is replacing last year's stolen equipment. That's money that could have been spent elsewhere. And of course, the administrative and technical time and paperwork to do so has its own cost. In the case of the AV cage, an ounce of prevention truly is worth a pound of cure. To summarize, the AV cage is a fundamentally unique and highly effective solution for mounting and protecting projectors. It's a complete commercial-grade projector mount. It's manufactured of heavy-duty 12-gauge cold-rolled steel. It's adjustable to fit most projectors. It offers one-key access. It has no exposed fasteners. A 70mm disc lock is included, with key-to-like upgrades available. It's a very effective physical and psychological countermeasure that's in use from Alaska to New Zealand. Why do you need the AV cage? It's simple. Projectors are stolen from classrooms every single day. Statistics show when the economy goes down, crime goes up. Many are unaware that anti-theft mounts are available and would have preferred an anti-theft mount if given the initial choice. The soft cost of replacing stolen equipment is typically 3 to 5 times the hard cost. Using the AV cage is inexpensive insurance against theft. This really is Security 101. Is the level of protection you are implementing appropriate to your level of risk? Are you still using unsecure consumer-grade mounts in your institutional or commercial installations? Time to switch. Thank you.